I talk as long as you want, even if, you know, just get it all out.
even though you're going like this.
No. Just
Is that my good side though? And look at you.
yes.
Right. Okay.
Indigenous. An individual, collective, and/or movement who through natural ability inspires others in innovation and creation by expressing one's traditional and cultural knowledge to advance community. An indigenous genius.
What was your first initial reaction to the definition?
It was inspiring. And so when I heard that definition, it harkened back to those messages that I often heard and confirmed every single thing that I had heard from my family, from my ohana, from the people in the community who believe the ways and the knowledge of our ancestors that have been passed down generation to generation. It's brilliant. And when I think about our navigators, we use the stars to navigate. And those stars are brilliant. And so when I heard that, I'm like, oh, it's exactly what I've been taught. And it's as brilliant as those stars that guided the ancients.
I think it's the permagrin I have on my face right now. It makes complete sense.
It was, and I loved it.
In my opinion, adding additional power to an already powerful word, which is indigenous. I think that there's some significant agency that our young people especially want and need.
It was inspiring, it was positive, it was something that I could say like, yeah, that's me.
What I liked about the definition, it was us coming up with the word and then defining who we are and how we move through the world. So I really loved that.
First off, I think that this particular campaign is going to resonate not only with elders, with our moms and our dads, grandmas and grandpas, it's also going to resonate more with our young people.
And I think we each have our own way of having that come to fruition. And so for me, I was like, that's me. That is my classroom. That is me working with students.
A lot of people are going to be inspired and empowered by it, and then hopefully embody it and see how they can say that they're indigenous in what they're doing.
How can being indigenous, based off of that description, apply to you and your work?
I am a true believer in individual impact, and I think one person can impact someone's trajectory in life. And I feel like that has happened with me on many different areas. And I feel like I can be that person. So I'm a very positive person, and I do that in the work I do. I really try to look at the bright side of things, especially for my students.
For me, being indigenous in higher education means using my experience and my knowledge of working with Native communities and ensuring that our programs and our policies are contributing to their success.
So my goal is to always try to recruit, and once we get them there, to retain them and to make them feel whole and actually honoring them. And so I've been in a lot of meetings where a lot of times I have to say, hey, wait a moment. Have we thought about this perspective? Have we thought about, we're not, whose land are we on? We haven't really talked about this. And it just kind of blows people's minds that, oh, we've never thought about that. And I'm like, how?
When I think of like working with students, you always have to think of innovative ways, right? So everything that's been written in higher education comes from a Western perspective. So you have to be innovative in terms of looking at these theories and how does that apply to my students?
The way that when you think about, like I said, when you're working with students, the way that students sort of come to fruition and see their own ideas come into like action. We know that when they're in school and they're going to school, it's not about getting a degree, it's about seeing something about them coming real, becoming solid, becoming more, I'll say pragmatic, because I think that's what all of us who are in education see happening, is that it is a pragmatic fruition of just who they are, and to them that becomes brilliant.
When I think about being indigenous, there's always been this tension for me in, do I have the right to claim being being a scholar practitioner. And part of that is the imposter syndrome of, should I even have made it to college? Do I have a right to be here? Am I too much and not enough? You don't belong in the academy because you don't act white enough. And in order to be a scholar, you have to act more Western, or you have to look a certain way. There was a point in my career where I said, you know what, I've decided I'm not going to look the way that I've been trained to look. So I'm going to wear more color. Not going to straighten my hair anymore. And be very intentional about that I'm not going to intentionally hide from the sun.
How can one be indigenous?
How can one be indigenous? That's a good question. There's not one way to be anything. I mean, if we're in academics, let's be real. We're constantly challenging the idea of one way of anything. To be indigenous, you're taking that indigenous identity to a whole new level. I think the question we need to ask, particularly the emerging generations, is, what do you feel your indigenous identity is? That's what's great about the Cobell Scholarship.
Do something positive, do something that helps their tribe and their community. I want it to be somebody who's anybody in the tribal community, not just, that person, but not me. I want everybody to feel that they can be empowered and inspired, motivated.
I've been in education almost all my life, including when I was in the elementary school. Well, we called it the day schools, because when I was in the 4th, 5th, 6th grades, when I'd finished with all my work, my teacher would send me into what we called the beginners class, and I would help the little ones. So somebody called me one time that I was the first teacher's aide. And I see this. The kids have natural abilities, but they need nurturing, and they need someone to just give them pushes. Even myself, if I hadn't been nurtured, I wouldn't have done all the things I had done. And this is my baby.
That they understand that through hard work, anything is possible. And a lot of students, I think, initially doubt that, but then when they do apply themselves and it starts to pay off by getting into specialized programs or into different higher ed, very selective institutions, once they graduate, then they're shocked. They're really shocked to believe that anything is possible as they get their acceptance letters. It's really neat to see that. And then they say, wow, now I understand why you really pushed us so hard to do these different things. And just really having that expectation that to be the best that they can be, and to put forth the best possible you.
To be indigenous is to be yourself, and not to have to feel you have to par and parcel your identities. And that you, just by being you, there is nothing wrong with you, that your merger of various identities and intersectionality are important. And that one thing I hope that our generations on down are able to do is basically inform past generations of this is who we are, and then continue to keep those past generations going along with the current ideas of who we are.
You'll realize very quickly that there's a lot of power and strength that's always been there. And so we're not finding it, we're just revealing it to ourselves. And in some cases, thus revealing it to those around us.
So, what does an indigenous person look like?
It looks like you, and it looks like me. It looks like my 5-year-old, just being who we are and speaking our language, even just saying hello in our language. If that's all you know, you're still saying the language. And that's really important, because that is part of our landscape.
Someone who, again, is their authentic self and is bringing all the different identities that you are, whether you're LGBTQ+, whether you're, ability issues, like you're mixed blood like I am.
A person who can hold a dream, a person who can, who thinks of community beyond just of service, being able to take service leadership to a role where it makes sense to not just that environment, but other environments around it?
I don't think it looks like one thing or one person. I kind of think of the word activist at times, and in our minds, when we think of activists, we think of somebody like on the front line of a movement, fist in the air. But that's not all, and the only thing an activist can be. You know, it can be somebody who's at home, who's just, they can't be there, but they're praying. It could be somebody who's donating money because that's really all they can do at that time. It can be somebody who's even working within the system to change it from within. So it's not one thing that makes them an activist. And in this case, it's not one thing that makes you indigenous.
We've been put into several boxes. I feel like we need to have a conversation that steps outside those boxes. So when we look at ourselves and try to figure out the definition of what does it mean to be someone that's indigenous and that's a genius, right? The way it breaks down for me is if you're a five-fingered Homo sapien, if you're Balashklai, and Navajo is what we call someone that's five-fingered living human being. You have a good heart, and you know your songs, you know your prayers, you want to reclaim that, regardless of the land you're standing on.
An individual who embraces their culture, someone who embraces, you know, Western ideas and thoughts, someone who can meld the two together, and not necessarily somebody who walks in two worlds, but someone who remains native at all times or indigenous and can move through the different aspects of their life, always centering themselves in that idea of, you know, being indigenous.
I think that we all have the potential to be an indigenous. As someone who returned to their culture later in life, I just want to say it's not too late. Your people are there and your ancestors are uplifting you. It's never too late to learn your language or your traditions or to learn what it means to be indigenous.
When I thought about it, I thought about my mom and her family and my dad's family and my aunties that I love so much, the ones that are here and the ones that are gone, because they were incredible women. And anytime I feel weak, I think of them and so much of how they would dote on all of us and care for us and make sure that we looked our best during ceremonies.
In our spirit song for our dance group, the first opening is Walayu Natu You, Walayu Natu You, Askeri Nadam Kwasli Dochum. The first two lines, they mean I know who I am, and the second means nobody's going to take us down in little pieces.